back to CBSE Board Economics. My name is Saddam Hussain. Today we discuss a very important topic in the poverty chapter of Indian economic development. That is poverty line. What exactly is poverty line? How is it determined? Poverty line determines in the country how we classify the poor. If you are below this line, what is this line about? I will be talking about it. If you are below this poverty line, we call you poor. If you are above this poverty line, you are not poor. That's poverty line. How do we decide who is below the poverty line, who is above the poverty line? There are two ways of determining below the poverty line and above the poverty line. This is number one, in simple words, in terms of calories you take. If you are in the rural areas, in the villages, if you are consuming or having 2,400 calories, okay, that means 2,400 calories and above, that means you are above the poverty line. In urban areas, in cities, if you consumed 2,100 calories and above, you are above the poverty line. If you're consuming less than that, you are below the poverty line. Why 2,100 in urban areas and why it is in rural areas 2,400 more? There is a difference of 300 calories. Why? 21, 22, 23, 24, 300 calories. Why? Because in rural areas, the people have to work hard. Manually they have to work hard, so obviously they consume more calories. In urban areas, not manual labor is required so much, so that is why it is less. That's one way of classifying or determining the poverty line. What is the other way of determining poverty line in terms of money? This is all given by the Planning Commission. This is in the second phase, that is determining poverty line. Tendulkar Committee we call it, according in the Planning Commission. In this case, they said in terms of money actually. I'll be just reading out. In terms of money, that means how much 2,100 calories will cost you in terms of money, how much is 2,400 calories cost you in terms of money. So that is poverty line. So once again I'll tell you, poverty line is determined in terms of calories or in terms of monthly expenditure, consumption expenditure. So basing on this, we decide who is poor and who is not poor. Distribution of income, right? Who is poor and who is not poor. There are two ways of finding it out. One is in terms of calories, one is in terms of money. Look on the board, right? I'll read out. Very simple here. What is written here? What exactly is poverty line? So you can see it on the board. What is poverty line? How is it determined? Poverty line is a cutoff point on the line of distribution which usually divides the population of the country as poor and non-poor. Poverty line is a cutoff point on the line of distribution which usually divides the population of the country as poor and non-poor. People having income below the poverty line are called poor, and people with income above poverty line are called non-poor. Determination of poverty line. In India, monthly per capita expenditure or MPCE method is used to determine the poverty line. Number one, minimum calorie intake. The Planning Commission has defined poverty line on the basis of recommended nutritional requirement of 2400 calories per person in rural areas and 2100 calories per person in rural areas. Number 2, monetary value of minimum calorie intake. According to the Planning Commission, this is a Tendulkar methodology, the minimum monthly per capita consumption expenditure, MPCE we call it, minimum monthly per capita consumption expenditure in 2011-12 is worked out to be rupees 218 per person, and in rural areas rupees 1000 per person in urban areas. So what do we conclude here? In terms of calories in rural areas, you should be having 2400 calories. If you have less than this, you are below the poverty line. In urban areas, in terms of calories, 2100. If you have less than this, you are below the poverty line. In terms of money, this we call it as monthly per capita consumption expenditure, MPCE. In 2011-12 Tendulkar methodology, if you consume rupees 816 per person in rural areas and rupees 1000 per person in urban areas. So now we'll read a comprehensive study. What is poverty line? How is it determined? Poverty line is a cutoff point on the line of distribution which usually divides the population of the country as poor and non-poor. The concept of poverty line is used to measure the extent of poverty in a country. People having income below the poverty line are called poor, and people with income above poverty line are called non-poor. Poverty line tries to capture the socially acceptable minimum living standards which the society tries to fulfill. Determination of poverty line in India, monthly per capita expenditure or MPCE method is used to determine the poverty line. According to this method, monetary value of per capita expenditure, the minimum calorie intake is calculated. Number 1, minimum calorie intake. The Planning Commission has defined poverty line on the basis of recommended nutritional requirements of 2400 calories per person per day for rural areas and 2100 calories per person per day in urban areas. Higher calorie intake has been fixed for rural areas because the rural worker has to do greater physical work as compared to the urban worker. Monetary value of minimum calorie intake. According to the Planning Commission, Tendulkar methodology, the minimum monthly per capita consumption expenditure MPCE in 2011-12 is worked out to be rupees 816 per person in rural areas and 1000 in urban areas. Poverty line divides the poor from non-poor. There are many kinds of poor: the absolutely poor, the very poor, and the poor. Similarly, there are various kinds of non-poor: the middle class, the upper middle class, the rich and the very rich, and the absolutely rich. The poverty line divides the poor from the non-poor. So that is poor, we have absolutely poor, very poor, and poor. Not so poor, if you are above the poverty line, not so poor, middle class, upper middle class, the rich, the very rich, millionaires and billionaires. That's non-poor. This method of determining poverty line is updated over time to take care of changes in poor levels. To understand what exactly is poverty line, so we to understand it, poverty line divides the country as poor and non-poor. This is the line with which we can find out who is poor and who is not poor in the country. We can decide it in two ways. One is in terms of calories, one in terms of monthly expenditure. So if someone has 2400 in rural areas and above, below that 2400 and less calories, below the he is poor. and in urban areas 2100 is the bottom line. In terms of money, so you see it here, if someone is spending 816 per person in rural areas and 1000 in urban areas, that's classification, right? This is an important question, right? Mind it for the board's point of view. So I wish you all the best for exam. Subscribe, share and like all our videos. So work hard, because your board exams are not very far from here. They are very close to you. Don't ignore. There is a second wave. Be careful. Follow all COVID protocol. Wash your hands. Have a mask. Maintain social distancing. Till we meet next time, be safe. Thank you guys. Best of luck. Bye-bye.